Welcome to the Passion Fruit Podcast, where we uncover inspiring stories from passionate individuals aiming to educate and ignite your own journey of true passion. Without further ado, let's dive in.
First of all, my name is Noor Al-Saeed, and I'm originally from Saudi Arabia. And I kind of grew up moving around between countries. So even though I am from Saudi Arabia, I feel like I do connect to other cultures and different, countries and stuff like that. I studied medicine in Ireland in the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland in Dublin, and I graduated in May of 2022. And I decided to do my internship in Ireland as well. So this is the 1-year postgraduate program. And I know in UK it's 2 years, but in Ireland it's only 1 year. So I just finished that recently in July 2023. And I decided to take a bit of a break from medicine because, the transition between medical school and then the working life was a very, very, steep, transition. So I'm a bit, I don't know, I feel like I'm trying to, prioritize like my well-being and all of that. So that's why I'm taking a bit of time off between heading back to the next, stage.
I would just like to say
hopefully-
hats off to you for prioritizing your well-being over the career of medicine, because it's tough.
Thank you. Like, not a lot of people are like very encouraging of that. They think that I'm going to lose medicine or whatever. It's only literally been 2 weeks since I've been off, but I feel like I need to have some time for myself, reprioritize my life as well before I get into the life of residency, which is a whole other challenge. My plan is at the moment is take a bit of time off, and then I'll go back to Saudi Arabia, my home country, and apply for residency programs there, and in between work service jobs.
Okay.
So that's a bit of
really
in a
nice.
nutshell. Yeah.
No, it's really nice. First of all, like anyone who prioritizes their, mental health and well-being and makes it a first, like your health is your wealth, essentially, and mental health is
100%.
a part of your health. And so if you don't have that, then you don't have anything. So I'm really glad that you've put that first, and it shows that you will be a good doctor because, inshallah, you're putting yourself first. And if you yourself are amazing and you're healthy, then obviously you can look at your patients. Otherwise, if you're not, then you and your patient will both be on the bed,
100%.
essentially, times like that. So no, it's really nice to see that side of it, because I feel like that's a culture that's not really encouraged as much, and I feel like it should be amongst the medical community, that prioritize yourself. And it is so demanding. Like me being in the UK, I'm already fearing for my residency training. Like I haven't started it. I'm like far away from it, but I'm just fearing that. So it's really nice to hear that sort of background. And from what I know is that you are passionate about documenting. Is that right?
Yeah. 100%.
Tell me more, what aspect of documenting? Because there's a whole load of range of documents.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. So basically, how I told you, I moved around between countries. So in New Year's in 2014, which is like, you have the new resolution, whatever, that time of year, and not a lot of people stick to it. But for some reason, I decided to start writing a journal every day. And I kept it through, which is still to this day, I'm like, wow, did I really keep a New Year's resolution? That's kind of crazy. So what happened is that what I was thinking at that stage was like, I was moving between different countries. I was meeting a lot of people. I was having so many different experiences. And I was so afraid of losing sight of that, or like forgetting what I was remembering what I was learning along the way. So I decided to like write every day, before I go to bed. I just write what happened in my day, what I kind of learned, what's something that I did I'm not proud of, and what's something I want to improve on. So that just quickly became a habit of mine. Right now, like I cannot go to bed before I write in my diary. And it's been now almost 10 years since I've been doing that. And then
that is amazing. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so that's one aspect of it. And then 5 years ago, there's this app called 1 Second a Day. And it's basically you record a second of your day every day. So I started doing that as well to kind of have a visual aspect of documenting my life as well. So I started doing that for the last 3-4 years. And then the other thing is that during my medical school, I had a small journal called Becoming Dr. Noor. So I've been kind of putting all the highlights of my medical school. Like the first time I kind of actually interacted with the patient, my my reflection on each specialty, the moments that really stood out to me, and kind of like, I feel like whenever I feel lost in the path of medicine, kind of like I want to read back, and like kind of, be encouraged to continue with my journey. So I think that was such a like an incredible tool to help shape my identity throughout my
Mm-hmm.
journey. So even after Korea, I moved back to Saudi for a year to finish off my high school. And then after that, I went to Ireland. So you can imagine, like, from the age of 16, 17, you have all of like your kind of core years all documented. So I'm very like, I want to go back to my old self and be like, thank you for doing that, because that was such a good move, And yeah.
I completely resonate with you. So, funnily enough, I'm a person who's crazy about diary writing. In fact, in my situation, I wasn't the individual who decided to do diary writing anyway. I was almost like, told to do it by my parents. My parents were like, start a logbook. And this was back when I was 7, 8 years old. And they're like, just, we would travel to Pakistan and stick random, crisp packets in there, things that you enjoy, things that you like, any photographs, Polaroids, all of the rest. And then starting from that point onwards, I've had this consistency of writing a diary each year. And like you talked about your med school diary, I've got one as well. I've got one for each and every year, the
Amazing.
highlights and the things that I've done. And honestly, I've got, take a guess as to how many different types of diaries I have.
Let me see, 4 maybe.
Probably around 8 to 9, and they're all different things and all different aspects of my life. So you've got one which is, talking about the things that worked well for me or things that made me happy diary. You've got the med school diary, you've got the everyday diary that's not necessarily linked to med school, because I kind of like to keep that life sort of separate. And then you've got, well, for me, I've got a YouTube diary, tracking my progress, how's it going, what my thoughts, what my current statistics. I've even got like a dream journal. Like sometimes I got that from like this movie, and I was like, what, this seems pretty cool. I write down my dreams. And that's probably like my most unusual diary, but there's so many other different ones as well. And one thing I'd say for sure is it definitely, like when you write something down and then you read back at it, it's refreshing, but also it kind of makes you realize that if you didn't write it down, that would have been a lost memory almost.
100%, yeah. And like, you go back and you're like, those were my friends, and that's what I was feeling about them. And it's really crazy, because like you don't realize how much your life changes from one year to another unless you go back and reflect on it. And also
100.
about the dream diary, I had one as well for a little while. Then I was like, yeah, this is too weird. I don't want to keep track, like, because my dreams they became more vivid, and I was like, no, I don't want to remember that. I'm good.
it becomes a lot more vivid, and it's funny because some dreams, they end up coming into reality. Like there will be certain elements of it. I'm like, so I wrote this down in 2014, and now it's 2020, and this has happened. I'm like, oh my gosh! But I definitely do think that writing the diary alone is not enough. It's the reading back at those diaries and seeing what has happened
100%,
so far. And when you read back and you reflect, one is refreshing. Two, you learn a lot from looking back. And it's almost like someone is talking to you about your past. You're reading it and you're reflecting it. It's almost literally a book, but a book you're writing about yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. And also like,
No, sorry,
and the other thing I want to touch up, the other thing I wanted to touch up on is like how it helped me shape my identity as well. So, when you're meeting different people and when you're in an environment that's different than your home environment or whatever, you're obviously going to be like subject to different opinions of the world, and everybody has their own beliefs or whatever. So what I found is that, like, if I keep this diary and I keep it to myself and I go back, I kind of see how people influence me and how I want to keep, I want to like stay me, even though everything around me is changing. I still want to have my own beliefs in my core, because especially in your 20s, when you're going around so much, like you're just
Mhm.
constantly exposed to so many different beliefs that you're like, okay, what do I actually believe in? So I feel like once you have some sort of like evidence of whatever you believe in, jot it down. It's kind of okay. Oh yeah, I want to stick to that. Or no, actually, like whatever I thought of was completely like bizarre. So I don't want to believe in that anymore. So I feel like it really helps if you're the kind of person who easily gets influenced by other people, which I feel like I am. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I feel like I still have these kind of elements to myself as long as I have them like recorded somewhere.
You know what? It almost sounds like an accountability check. You write stuff down as you're
Yeah.
going along, and as you come to the end of the year or whenever you finish that journal or diary and you read back at it, you can almost, one, you can see the changes in your environment, but you can also see the change within yourself. And if you feel like it's a good change, you'll probably continue it. If you feel like it's a bad change, you probably discontinue it. And I think sometimes not everyone will be there to tell you that. And if you document as you
Yeah.
go along, you're almost holding yourself accountable. And it's almost like your past telling you what you're doing good and what you're not doing good. And your present will know whether,
Yeah.
that's a good thing or not. And I just find it, I've never come across a negative thing or a bad, consequence of writing a diary or a journal. Like, it's always been in my benefit. And up until now, there have been so many benefits and still counting as to how much a diary or writing a diary has actually impacted me. You talked about, the 1 second a day as well, and that app where you take a visualization of your day for 1 second, and then obviously over the years, or over the year, you compile that, and you've got like this 10-minute video or however long it is. Like, I've only recently started to shift away from handwritten diaries to actual digital diaries. So I use this app called the Day One app, where I've got like 3 or 4 journals, and obviously I can put input pictures and all that sort of stuff. And I started like digital diaries back in 2014, but when I look back at them and look at the pictures, it's like, it is just absolutely amazing. But the only reason why I've gone digital is so that I can print it out later on. And then obviously handwriting is probably another thing as well. But yeah, so
That's a
that
very
yeah,
aesthetic way to do it, but great. Like I'm gonna
yeah,
check it out
yeah.
definitely after this.
Definitely check it out. I think it's probably one of my favorite and only apps I use for journaling, and probably security aspect of it as well. But I've got another question for you. You talked about journaling and you talked about documenting as you go along. What was that point in your life in which you decided journaling, you wanted to do journaling, or it was important? Like, what was that moment or event, or did someone say something to you that you ended up doing journaling? Like, what made you start it off?
I think I was I think I came into the realization that life is just a getaway to loss. It's like every time you experience a moment, you realize, okay, it's gone. So I was so
Mhm.
afraid of not holding on to any memories. I was like, okay, I need to write this down, or because like growing up, I would go to a place, make friends, be close to them, and then without me noticing, I'd be like, okay, it's time to say goodbye. So every time that kind of scared me that I don't really have any hold to other people. Like, it just really made me realize, okay, there's nothing, constant. Everything's going to change. So I was like, no, I need to kind of, documenting is a way of making sure it's going to stay there with me forever, despite the different versions of myself that are going to come along the way. So I think that was it. I remember like it was during school, and I was like having maybe a stupid crush on someone. I was like, you know what? I kind of want to remember this along the years. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to write it. And then you look back and you're like, oh my God, like, what was I thinking? Like, really, Noor, really? That's your taste? But it's fun. It's really fun.
No, one
Yeah.
hundred
So it's
percent.
kind
And
of
I
like
think
yeah, yeah. There is a serious element to it. It's like, oh my God, like I'm pretty sure I had like an existential crisis. I'm like, oh my God, everything is changing. I'm losing everything in my life, blah, blah, blah. And there's another aspect where it's like, you know what? I'm just a little, like a silly little teenager writing whatever she was thinking. Yeah.
no, I really like that. And I think that is pretty much the same as me as well. Like, I love documenting. I'm probably that friend in that group who's always taking photos of everyone and everything that we're doing
Yeah.
as we're going along, because I know time is going by. We're enjoying the moment. Yes, I'm still in the moment, but I want to keep this moment forever, almost to the point that
Yeah.
I don't want to just keep these memories to myself. I take them to share them, and share them either with my future self, or because as we get older we might forget a couple of things here and there, and I think these things are so precious. I think the idea of photography and then journaling are so underrated. It's like we don't even think about it too much, that the invention
Yeah,
of a camera is such a amazing thing. And then obviously,
yeah,
journaling as well, that's becoming more of a popular thing as the days are going on. But like you said, the importance of capturing those moments, I definitely resonate with you. I do not want to, lose any of these moments I'm having. Like, I'm currently in med school. I don't want to forget med school and what it was like, because I know when you become a doctor, I know for a fact that the memories of med school will suddenly slowly diminish, and you'll probably just remember maybe
100%.
a
Yeah,
couple of things here and there. And I don't want to lose that, because I know it's like, that prime time in your life where you're at university, you're, with friends, life is completely different as to when you might start, residency training as well. So I think
yeah,
knowing that there are so many different phases in our lives, and each one has their own challenges, and each one has their own, group of people, I just don't want to lose that. And then when you reflect back on it,
yeah,
when 60 years, 50 years later, it's such a refreshing feeling. So no, I definitely agree with that. And when you talked about identity, can you talk a little bit further about that, as to when were you challenged with your identity at any point, to the point that you started, well, like, what even made you think about this identity and whether
okay,
you
yeah.
would be changing
So
it?
cool. So I'll start once. Like, I think the biggest identity challenge I had was when I lived in Korea. So I lived in the UK and US before, but those places are known to be like kind of more multicultural than Korea. So when we moved there, I was still in an international school, but the majority had like ethnic Korean, backgrounds and stuff like that. So
Mm,
I was literally the most different person in that school. Like, I was the only person wearing the headscarf, and then like
mm,
later on, more people came. And so for me, it was like, okay, everybody else is doing this thing, and I'm holding on to this thing. So who's right and who's wrong? And that's a very scary thought, because like, okay, if whatever I was like, if whatever I believed in since I was very young turned out to be wrong, that's just gonna be like, what why was I doing that, or how did I like, or my family wrong, or we, so you have all these thoughts, but then you slowly get to realize that it's the difference that makes us, more connected as human beings. And I
mhm,
found strength in my differences in Korea, and that was because of like the lovely environment surrounding me. So I remember this teacher, and he was always like, okay, Noor, you always bring out something different to the table. So I kind of felt special. So instead of using that as a weakness, I'm like, oh, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm, or what if I, whatever? I started bringing that as a, as a strength to myself. So I was like doing all these kind of art projects that's like revolved around the hijab, the headscarf, to like bring more
mm,
awareness to it. And a lot of people like kind of, they had this misconception that I was wearing it against my will. And then when they saw like my, my art projects, saying, no, this is actually because of my own will and because of what I believe in and all of that, they had a better understanding of me. So it made me feel more seen. And I think like that really helped, later on in my life, when I was also challenged by different ideas about my identity and my beliefs. I was like, okay, no, but this is what happened before. It was a strength to you, you know? So I kind of like held on to that. The other thing was also like, in terms of religious beliefs. So I was also like kind of, there's a very minimal like Muslim population in that school.
mhm,
So it was very important to like kind of raise awareness about our beliefs and make sure that everybody like kind of, doesn't have all these misconceptions about us. Um, and yeah, and be, and really be open minded. Like, I started going from, okay, yeah, this is like whatever I believe in is 100% right and everybody else wrong, to like, okay, oh no,
mhm.
actually what they believe is right and that's their right. What,
Yeah.
and like, and it became more of like a strict belief system to a more open minded and lenient, and like realizing that no, like, okay, they have this kind of point of view, this point of view, and instead of like going back to like, just strictly believing in like, whatever my parents told me or whatever like religious schools I attended and they told me this is right, I started no, developing my own beliefs based on other people as well. You know what I mean? It's kind of a hard concept to like explain, but
So would you say
yeah.
it's a case of in a group of people, everyone is right in their own way? And
Yeah,
let's say we've got a group of people, they all come from 7 different countries, and from
yeah,
each person has their own culturally or religious right concept that they have that they're bringing to the table.
yeah,
But for the other person, they might not practice that. They might not even do that. They might have not even heard of, a headscarf or a hijab. But for the other person, this is right. And it's almost coming to that
yeah,
understanding that there are cultural beliefs. There is a majority thought and belief in that person's world that might not resonate with
yeah,
you, but to be understanding and open minded in that, there are other rights, there are other,
yeah,
you are right.
yeah.
This is kind of a hard way to explain it, but
Yeah. No,
hopefully,
I think, yeah, you phrased it better than I did. Like, listen, if I had to write this down, I would have probably phrased it better, but saying it out loud, it's like,
no, of
but
course,
it's
no, of course. So
yeah.
that completely makes sense. And then how would you link? So this, scenario here. Well, first of all, I want to ask, if you don't mind me asking, when did you go to Korea, and what was it for? High school, or was it for?
Yeah, so I went around ninth grade. That I think
Mhm.
that's what is it called in the UK? I forgot.
We
Um,
call it year. Oh, year
year
9.
eight,
We just call
year
it
something
year
like.
9. Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So basically, my dad he works as an engineer, and
Mhm.
he has actually he's a engineer slash project manager. So every time he has like these new project with his company, we move along with him. So
Mhm.
that's why. So he had like a project in Korea, and we stayed there for 2 years and a half.
Okay,
So that was
that's
during my
quite
high
cool.
school. Most, yeah, yeah.
And just another question out of curiosity: did you learn Korean?
I did, yeah. Like I learned how to read and write, but unfortunately,
Whoa.
my speaking isn't the best because like I haven't been able to like practice it as much. That's actually one
Mhm.
of my biggest regrets is that I haven't spent more time learning Korean because I'm still trying. Like I have Duolingo and these streaks, man, I can't keep them up. So I'll
No,
try.
honestly, like I have it as well. It's really hard. I'm trying with Spanish, but
Yeah,
it's really nice that
yeah,
you've gone there for 2 years, and obviously you've picked up. Well, you were able to read and write, and I can only imagine reading and writing that certain language is very different to the Latin language or any other different languages like English, etc. So, like, hats off to you for that as well. Like, I can only imagine that regret now of being like, I wish I spent more time doing that, because it's literally you're opening up another door to speak to a whole variety of other people as well. And I think that's
yeah,
another thing. So going back to the identity thing, you can use that language as a bridge for understanding between
oh
different
yeah,
cultures and
100%.
introduce different cultures, because the way you might describe something in, let's say, in Arabic might be different to the way you might describe something in English, but it might be better addressed in that certain language. So no, I definitely agree with the idea of learning the language. So it's really nice to see that. And so how would this identity thing then link into your journaling aspect? Would this be a thing that you'd write down, the experiences that you had? You almost felt, there was an element of isolation by the sounds of it.
Can you repeat your question because I think it disconnected in the middle? So
So,
yeah.
so like, how would you link your identity, the sort of thing that you have here, with the journaling? Would it be something that you'd write down and talk about how you felt, how you were made to be felt, what sort of experiences you had, and how did those experiences then impact today?
Yeah, so I feel like for me, I was always kind of more of a shy child. So I feel like
Mhm.
whenever I would speak up, nobody would really understand me. So I feel like whatever conflicting thoughts I've had about any other like kind of, you know, um, controversial subject, I could only like write it down and I know I wouldn't be judged for whatever I was thinking. So I feel like
Mhm.
that kind of, you know, I use that as like along the way to like, okay, this is what I think and this is what other people are thinking, but this is what we believe in, but this is, I don't feel like we have to believe in that. And, so yeah, I feel like that was kind of the main ideas. I didn't really feel understood most of the time. So I used that to help me.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. So my other question is, now that you went to Korea, you went to Saudi Arabia, you went to Ireland, and now you're currently in the US. Do you
Yeah.
think traveling has impacted any aspect of your documentation or your journaling and diary writing?
Oh yeah, it's way more exciting. Like especially like with the TikToks and everything, it just feels like okay, you're like a traveling person and all of that. Yeah, it just adds a different variety and different kind of flavor to whatever you're writing. And sometimes, like I do admit, like during traveling, it kind of gets tiring because it's like okay, you just want to relax, have fun, and that's the other thing. Documenting doesn't always have to be so serious. Like you don't have to like, oh, this is what I'm feeling today, blah blah blah. No, sometimes it's just like, okay, this is something that happened today and it was good or whatever. So yeah, I think definitely like if you have the chance as someone young to travel, go for it. Like money will come and go, but traveling, like, the time that you have right now, like really use it to explore more of the world. And I do say that because I know like I do have some privilege of like, I had my college was sponsored and I had a scholarship and everything. So I did have more, financial aspect to study, to travel more. But I do believe like, especially in Europe, it's kind of, you can travel on a budget as well if you were, if you want to prioritize that. Yeah.
And of course, and I definitely agree with that elements of traveling. Like traveling just opens your mind up in so many different ways, more than, one. The people you meet, the mindsets that you come across, and it just makes you think and reflect about your own as well. And traveling makes you more accepting, which is why you
100%.
probably, when you were talking about, when you went to Korea and you were coming across these things where, people might have not known what the hijab was, or they were unsure about the headscarf, because you had, well, one, because, you wear it to yourself, but two, maybe because they weren't as well traveled, that they hadn't come across these things and the wide variety of other cultures and beliefs. And I feel like you were probably more accepting of them, not just because you were in the country and you were surrounded by a majority, but more so because maybe you have been traveled and you've had this expectation that there'll be a whole variety of people now in your life. So I can definitely see how traveling can impact you. Now, another question I've got is out of, you've mentioned, that 1 second app, you've talked about, journaling, handwritten. What would you say is the best medium for documenting? If you had to choose one, if you were to like ditch the others and pick one, which one would you choose? And why would you choose that over the other?
Yeah, I'd say journaling, because that's when you have your own personal voice into it, because it's more subjective. If you're taking a video or a picture, like, okay, you might look happy in that picture. You might look, or your friends are doing like, or you're all happy or whatever, but it doesn't kind of reflect on the underlying things that might have happened, or kind of the struggles that led to like you guys being happy in that moment, or vice versa. So like sometimes I would also like take pictures of me like crying or whatever, just so I can look back and be like, okay, I was crying, but sometimes I don't even remember why. That's why I think like journaling is good, because like, okay, you can pinpoint exactly the feelings that you've been having and why they happened as well. So definitely journaling. Yeah.
And this is a bit of a personal question, but is there anything that you regret journaling? Because I know we, journal to maybe sometimes to let off some steam or to document a happy memory, sad memory, whatever it may be. But when you read back at it, do you ever regret, be like, I'm just going to cross this out and be like, nah, I don't want that there?
See, I've never journaled anything bad about someone. Like even if somebody hurt me, I would never like say specifically what they did to me, because I feel bad. Like I don't want to hold on to that. I will write around it. I'll write, okay, this is kind of what I felt today, blah blah blah. But I don't like to write like the details of what's happened, because I think some things are meant to be let go of. So I don't want to hold on to that. And also, like, I always have this thing in the back of my mind: would I like someone to write this about me? No, so I don't write it. There are some things like, I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, so anything that's, I feel like, too specific or too, like, too personal to me, sometimes I wouldn't write it because I'm too kind of like cautious. I'm like, what if somebody reads it, whatever. So yeah, I wouldn't. I would write around it, like I would write like in codes and stuff like that, but I don't specifically write it. Yeah.
No, of course. Like, obviously, like you said, essentially treat others how you want to be treated. If you don't want to, write, well, you shouldn't write something bad about someone, especially if you don't want someone else to write bad about you as well. So that's completely valid, and that's a sensible choice. Like, what I tend to do is when I'm writing my diary is, let's say I did have a bad day, I put either a little star that something happened on this day, and like you said, drop hints in the passage, so I know that something did happen on this day, and that star meant something important. So for me, I know that memory is still there. But at the same time, I totally agree with omitting those negative memories and anything that you might potentially regret. And it's you want to write about things that are happy and positive, so you kind of attract those. As it's a bit cliche, but kind of like a law of attraction. You are what you eat, or you write how you should. There's, I don't know how to just explain it, but if you be positive, stay positive, you almost attract positivity. It's a very cliche thing, but I definitely do see it resonate. So I definitely do see it resonate. So I think even for writing as well, writing about things that are happy, and when you read back on it, it simply, you've captured those emotions there. So that completely makes sense. And in terms of where you are right now with documenting and in the future as well, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself continuing?
I do have thoughts about stopping altogether, and I'll explain why. So I feel like I documented the majority of what I call like my core years, the things that the years that really, shape who you are. And I feel like as you go along, even though it is obviously it's possible, we're going to continue to grow every day and change. I feel like you kind of reach a more like, you have kind of these like the foundation or the fundamentals of your beliefs. So I feel like as I go along, I don't know. Like sometimes I feel like I'm too attached to this. Like I need to keep writing, but at the same time, I feel like if I just continue, like sometimes it does feel like a chore, and like I don't really have anything to add. And that's also another thing. Like my documenting style has changed. So when I first started, it was mostly like saying whatever happened to me, and like it's kind of like a story. And then I would say the good deed that I did for the day and the sin that I did for the day. And along the way, and I had to write exactly one page every day. And sometimes and then like I look back and I realize I'm just like blabbing on. Like sometimes I'm not really adding anything like valuable. Like, oh yeah, I went to the supermarket today. Like even reading it back, like I get bored. I'm like, nobody cares, So then I kind of shifted in in writing more about how I feel. And I think that was the more therapeutic aspect to it. It's like, okay, it was kind of, like it's a way to de-stress yourself and all of that. And then there were some days where I would be having really, really bad days and I just couldn't write. Like even if I tried, I'm like, I can't, like I don't even want to remember this day, But then obviously when I go back to, I'm like, okay, this is what happened in the previous day, like kind of just a one-liner. So now it shifted from like more like a storytelling to more of a, reflective thing. And I write as how I feel. Like, so I wouldn't like, tell myself, oh, you have to write one page today. Even sometimes it was just 2-3 sentences, as long as I just kept it going. But I feel like now, like, as I'm becoming more of an adult in the real world, I don't know if I can sustain that in the long term and if it's going to help me as it used to help me before.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure yet. I might stop it. I might not, but we'll see how it goes. I feel like I will have some sort of documenting still going on, but not in the daily. Like I have to write every day. Yeah.
Like even with me as well, even I struggle to write on the daily. Like I sometimes I just find it absolutely difficult. And when times you feel drained or you're sad that day, even though I can't physically write, like it's literally impossible. I just, what am I going to write? I almost like have that attitude to when it comes to writing. But what I've done is, and it's kind of helped so far, is I find it easy just to speak, almost like as if you're speaking to a friend. A friend asks you, "Oh, what's up?" or "What's the matter?" You can easily speak. And so I have this,
Yeah.
the Day One app as well, and a voice recorder, and it will transcribe what I say into written. And so it almost feels like I'm cheating the system in a way. Whilst I'm not writing, it's being written for me, and almost like I'm speaking to a friend, and I'm saying, "Oh, this has happened. It's made me feel like this. I wonder if maybe if I had done this, it would have worked." We'll see in next season or episode of my life. So things like that, and I think that genuinely has helped me in that aspect of it. With regards to, so wait, let me just get this clear. You've been writing daily, almost.
Yeah, almost it. Just in the last year or so, I kind of like been. I would go 2-3 days without writing, and that was just because of my work circumstances and the hell I've been through. So it was hard. That kind of also put things into perspective with me. I was like, can I do this every day? And like, I don't want to feel bad for not doing something, So you kind of want to shift how you do it.
No, of course. Like, if you can change, then so can your goals. Well, your goals can change or should change as well as you go along in life. Because that's something I've told myself. When you set a goal of learning Spanish in every single day, but if I'm changing over the period of time, so can my goal. Maybe I've got different priorities, different responsibilities as we go along in life. So I definitely agree with that. But one thing, I wanted to also ask was, so you've done it pretty much every single day, and since how long?
So yeah, since 2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Don't mind me asking, how many journals or diaries is that?
I have loads. Like, I think I have at least 15. So that's been also a pain to just, keep moving them between one country and another, because they're so much heavy. And like now when you're an adult and you realize the cost of like shipping, you're like, this ain't worth it. So and I'm like, didn't know.
That is absolutely amazing that you've got 15, and those that's just, so I'm guessing a diary almost per year, kind of.
Yeah, one or two. Depends. Like, I feel like when I was writing every day, it was like a lot more. But now that I'm kind of, as I'm going, no, it's less, which is nicer. Yeah.
You've said one pretty interesting thing, and I feel like, for someone, let's say, who isn't passionate about diary writing or journaling or documenting, and someone who is trying to get into it, and they're doing the basic thing of, I went to supermarket today, I did this today, I did that today. I think you've highlighted a really important element of journaling, which is that might not be as important as the actual emotion and thinking and feeling of that certain thing that you were doing. I think that is probably, in terms of feeling and difference, describe the difference between the two writing styles, and why would you say the thinking and the feeling and the emotion one is probably better than just listing out what you did? Even though sometimes I do that and I'm just like, oh yeah, I did XYZ thing on the 7th of July 2018, but other than that I don't think of much. But tell me a little bit more about that.
Like, obviously there's no specific rules, like you can write whatever you feel, but yeah, I feel like when I was writing like specifically what was happening in the day, I wasn't really thinking about my perspective on it. So I was like kind of like looking at my life from an outward perspective and not living in it and kind of reflecting on it as I go. So when I started writing in the other style, where it was like more reflection, you would see me even through the day. I was like, oh yeah, this happened, I'm gonna have to write this down because this is gonna help me later on, blah blah blah. So, and it felt, it kind of gave you more that therapeutic element that, okay, like even if I don't want to bother anyone right now with my problems, I still have my diary, to vent to, which is kind of a little sad to be honest, but you kind of need this personal thing to yourself. I had another point, but I forgot it, so just kind of keep
No,
going.
don't worry. If you remember it, definitely do share it. So the other thing I was going to ask was, okay, now even I've forgotten what I was going to say. That's absolutely wonderful. So let me try and think. What was the thing I was going to say? This is really bad. Okay, no.
No, it's
So,
fine. Different styles, jotting
yeah,
down.
so the other thing I was going to mention was, for someone who, in fact, this is a really good point. So you've done it for what, since 2014, nearly pretty much every day, maybe minus 7, 8 weeks in total that you probably might have not done it. Like, how did you keep up the
There was a
motivation?
time. Oh yeah, people.
How did you keep up with the motivation?
I think it's more out of making it a habit rather than like a task that you need to complete every day. So once you incorporate it with your nightly routine, it just becomes a habit that you stick to. So I can just be like, okay, that was my nightly routine. I would do my skincare, go to the bathroom, whatever, come back, write my diary, and sleep. So it kind of just became natural. I wouldn't even think about it twice. But now, like after like in the past year with working and all of that, like I'd be so drained. Like I'm like I don't even want to look at it. Like I don't care, whatever. So that's the other thing. Just make a habit out of it and start slow. Like if somebody wants to start, like I had some friends that were like kind of motivated by me to start, which I loved it. Like and it's always that part of, oh, how could I keep going? That's hard. Just basically make a habit out of it. Once you do it for like 21 days or something, I think,
yeah, something like that. So that's a really interesting point. So you've talked about not making it a habit and just kind of making it a part of your routine. So you already had a routine in your life and you kind of just associated or attached just an additional thing to that routine. So let's say you're doing your nighttime routine, doing skincare and stuff, and then before you go to bed, you've got your journal out on the bed next to you. So you made it easy and accessible for you to even be able to do that journaling. I think that is a huge part of motivation. And it's just making me reflect now, like, why do I find it sometimes really hard to even be motivated to journal is because I'm not making it accessible enough. When I'm doing I don't really have much of a nighttime routine, other than wash my face, pray, and all that sort of stuff. But I definitely do think I can add that into my life. And I think that's a really valid point. And something that is quite valuable that you've just taught me there is that, adding, this thing that you want to do for long term to an already pre-made routine that you have in your life, which will make it a lot easier. So maybe straight after brushing, you do your journaling. It should be, like you said, it'll come to you naturally. So I definitely really like that. And would there be anything else you would say to someone who also wants to start journaling or is struggling to journal? Like anything that would potentially motivate them? I know this might be a bit of a difficult question.
I'd say, like, maybe keep in mind how, like life is it goes by so fast. And there's so many things that you wish you could, remember or recall every day. So whatever you think is worth, remembering, just jot it down. You don't have to be strict and have everything so aesthetic. It's just getting in the habit of, doing it every day, or as you said, like attach it to something you're already doing. And and just like read more about like the effects it has on people and like, their experiences with it as well. Because it really did help me in days that I was like, okay, nobody understood me. Nobody understands what's going on. And even like if you're having conflicts with other people, sometimes like, when you straight away say what you're feeling, it does more damage than, actually reflecting on it first and then, saying it out loud. At the same time, if you don't feel like doing it, you don't have to. Like you can't force something on yourself as well. So kind of just go easy on yourself. Like I remember I was like, oh, I have to do it every day. If I didn't do it, like I lose my identity, everybody knows that I'm doing this thing, whatever. And that's added pressure that you don't want in your life as well. So keep it easy, keep it, simple. not everything has
No,
to
of
be so
course.
strict. Not everything has to be so like reflective. Or like, oh my god, I have to reflect every day, or my life is not worth living. Or blah, blah. No, it's not. It's fine. You'll survive.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think there's this like almost set rule about journaling or diary writing, and like everyone should start off with dear diary. Well, they used to, but not anymore. But there's
I
this
still do it
set
because I'm
expectation. You
attached.
still do it?
Yeah, I'm still attached. I have to say Dear Diary. I don't know, like it's yeah, I'm too attached to that.
No, I guess that adds a personal touch to it. No, I definitely like that.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I was going to, oh gosh, it's gone again. I don't know why today I'm like starting to lose like what the things that I'm wanting to say. But I think
No, no.
the other thing I was going to ask was, yes, I found it. So you talked about how some days in the past year you found it difficult to work. You come home, well, not difficult to work, but you come home and you find it difficult to actually even have the energy or time to actually journal. But in that moment, you're fatigued, you're tired, you're exhausted for whatever reasons. And you know the benefits of journaling and diarying. I don't know if that's a word, but journaling is, it will help your mental health, well-being, helps to add clarity to your thought. Do you think you would need something like that in that very moment in time whilst you're working, whilst you're all exhausted, but you still don't have the energy to actually do the thing that could potentially benefit you?
So your question is, should I keep doing it even though it's
Yes, so that was a very long-winded way of saying, yeah. So should you, should you still, do you feel like you should still be
oh
doing the diary or journaling whilst you come back from work?
I mean it depends. Like if you have some sort of overwhelming feeling, then you should. Because every you go in every day with your life and like sometimes life becomes really repetitive. So you're like, there's really no point. But sometimes when
Mm-hmm.
something triggers you and something happens, you're like, okay, I want to understand why I was triggered. And that's the other thing this is what I remembered from before is the reason why I kind of want to stop like writing is so I can experience things more hands on and like not always like be in my head when things happen and just say it out loud and interact with other people. Because like like as you're growing up, you're kind of like, especially if you're reflecting on yourself and you're doing more like self healing and all of that, you kind of just you learn a lot about yourself, but sometimes you have to put it in practice. There's no point in like, okay, yeah, I'm like this, but you're not exposed to things that trigger you, or you're not exposed to things that like actually exhibit some certain behaviors from you. So that's the other thing, like it's instead of being just focused on myself and being, oh, this is me, like you have to be involved with other people because that's how life goes. You don't live this life alone, like you live it with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to stop being just by yourself. Yeah.
So do you feel like almost this journaling is almost becoming a protective shield, not allowing you to live life properly hands-on?
No, like I don't think it's like that per se, but I just meant like instead of just focusing on that solely, you also focus on your interactions with other people as well. Because
Mm-hmm.
you might think, oh, I'm a certain way like this, but if that's not put into practice, if that's not triggered by other people, then you wouldn't really know. Because like I always thought, okay, I'm like this kind of calm person because I sit in my little bed at night and write my journal and I'm so peaceful, blah, blah. But no, there's so many things that like trigger me during the day and I'm like, yeah, I'm not so peaceful, so I gotta that also helps me. There's different ways that you can reflect on yourself. It's not just journaling.
And what would you say has there been a specific diary entry that you vividly remember that you were glad that you wrote it down?
Definitely when I first start a different chapter in my life, like when I started medical
Mm-hmm.
school, when I graduated, like all these big moments in my life, whenever I document about them, I was like, oh, thank God. Because like you can really capture exactly how you felt at that exact moment. And you can also see like how different people meant to you. Because sometimes, like, with friendships, like the dynamic of friendships can change, like based on like, just how life goes. So it's kind of cool to see, okay, I was close to this person at this time, but actually they weren't that good for me, or like, oh no, I want to keep this person in my life forever because they kind of make me have this side of myself like accountable or all of that. So it's really good. It's really good to have like these kind of, stops in life that you can always go back to and be like, okay, this is how I was at that point in time, and this is how I kind of want to keep going, or what I want to change.
No, definitely. And the other question that just came to my mind now is, let's say you do stop, and this is like something that you've been doing for since like probably more than 10 years and since 2014. Like you stopping journaling or writing in a diary, would you predict that you would feel this element of being lost almost, or feeling like this empty thing that or do you feel like you probably wouldn't notice?
No, I would definitely notice. I feel like even like especially in the last year when I would go like 3-4 days without like doing it, every time if I go to sleep, I feel like there's something missing. Like I don't know, like I need to like untangle my thoughts. It really has become a tool to myself. The other thing is that like I just remember the things that I actually like. I'm glad that I've documented is like my really bad days, even though it's really hard to do that. But you look back and you realize that every feeling that you've had is not temporary, and that's a really good reminder to have, because sometimes you really think like life is not worth it anymore, like everything is crashing down and all of that, and you're like literally in the pit of despair. And then you look back and you see, oh, I survived that. So you're like, okay, I can survive this as well, So that's a really good thing that I always look back to. I love to go back to like my sad periods in life and be like, oh, I survived that. Like I really thought I couldn't. I really thought I wouldn't, but here I am.
Thank you for listening in to episode 5 of the Passion Fruit podcast. My name is Mehdi Kiro, also known as Shumail.